We think history is written by the people everyone's watching. But sometimes it comes down to something nobody is allowed to look at. A photograph, a stamp that says top secret, and a man who can't show it to anyone. None of it was supposed to matter, but together they may have decided whether 3 men came home. July 24th, 1969. Oh, and in the next few minutes, there's a fire that turns out to be the safest thing about that whole day. A weather report 2 men risk their careers to pass on. A maneuver no other Apollo flight ever flew. And something coming down behind the capsule that had no business being there at all. And a medal handed to a man who wasn't allowed to say what it was for 26 years. This one's for the ones who stay. The noticers. Something ordinary, except it never was. So, the bit everyone remembers. A capsule hitting the air at 24,000 miles an hour. Wrapped in fire, 5,000 degrees outside the window, and 4 minutes where nobody on Earth can hear a thing. That's the image that stuck. The heat shield. The thing that might not hold. Except, it turns out it was never really close. NASA's own flight journal says the shield was over-designed for the entry they flew. It could have taken far worse than it got. So the part everyone held their breath for was the part that was never really in question. Which is a strange feeling, honestly, because if the danger wasn't in the fire, then where was it? 72 hours earlier, Hawaii. A base called Hickham. And this is the part that gets me. Armstrong and Aldrin are out there on the moon. Every single person on this planet is looking up. And there's a man in a locked room, looking down at photographs. His name's Hank Brandley, and he has nothing to do with Apollo. Nothing. His job is forecasting weather for spy satellites. Which sounds like a joke, until you sit with it. Because those satellites drop their film in canisters, and cargo aircraft catch them in mid-air. And you can't do that in a storm. So for that job, he's been handed something. A weather satellite quietly better than anything NASA has. 5 days of accurate forecast. When nobody else could manage that. The best weather data on the planet, sitting on the desk of a man whose work has nothing to do with the moon. And on those images, out over the Pacific, something's building. Storms with vortices high up. Shaped almost like birds. The crews had a name for them. Screaming eagles. Tops at 50,000 feet. Winds up there that tear things apart. And they're drifting toward the exact patch of ocean where Apollo 11 is due to come down. And a capsule comes down on parachutes. That's the whole plan. 3 canopies, Brandley's own words years later. That storm would have ripped them to shreds, and without them, hitting water is hitting concrete. So obviously, he picks up the phone, except he can't, because the satellite doesn't exist. Officially, it isn't up there. Nobody at NASA is cleared for it. Not one person. His own deputy commander hasn't been briefed. So there he is, evidence in hand. And showing it to anyone who could use it would be a crime. That's the bit that keeps turning over. 3 men are falling back from the moon. A storm is walking toward the water they're aimed at. One person can see it coming, and he's not allowed to say a word. So instead, he goes looking for a gap. The Navy handles the weather for Apollo, and their chief weather officer happens to be cleared for the satellite, but not for the spy program behind it. So Brandley calls him and explains nothing. He just says, "Meet me in the car park." By the hangar. The man has only just arrived in Hawaii. He gets taken into a secure office, and by his own account, Brandley literally yanks him through the vault door. And there it is. A major storm, forming right over the Splashdown site. His line afterwards, "I'd arrived just in time." But now the problem just moves up 1 floor, because the man who can actually move the ships is a rear admiral, and he can't be shown anything. The photographs come from a satellite that isn't supposed to exist, so a captain has to convince an admiral to move an entire carrier task force using evidence he isn't allowed to produce, and the admiral says yes, then adds the part that just won't leave. "You'd better be right, young man." And then he does something quietly enormous. He starts moving the task force to the new area. before the official orders arrive. The president is already flying out to shake their hands on that deck. The captain put it plainly years later. It was a career ender for both of us. And we knew it. And up in the spacecraft, none of this is happening. That's almost the funny part. The day before, Mission Control tells Armstrong the weather looks acceptable. There's a tropical storm out there, but it's breaking up. Armstrong says, "Okay, sounds pretty good." 10 hours later, a different voice on the loop. Charlie Duke, straight out of a weather briefing. "The weather's clobbering in at the target point," he says. "We don't want to tangle with one of those. So we're moving your aim point." 215 miles, and nobody says why. Wait, not to keep it from the crew. The men in that room don't know either. But shifting the landing point does something, because the capsule is already falling. You can't steer it 200 miles sideways, like a car. It has to fly further through the air to get there, so the computer solves it. It enters the atmosphere, then uses the capsule's own lift to rise slightly back up, stretching the path, riding out over the weather, before dropping in again. And this is the part that got checked twice, because it looked like a mistake. No. Out of every Apollo flight that came home from the moon, Apollo 11 is the only one that ever did this. One maneuver, flown once, in the entire program, because of a photograph nobody was allowed to see. Small thing while we're here, because this one comes up constantly. People say Apollo capsules skipped off the atmosphere to bleed off speed. Like a stone across a pond. No, they didn't. Apollo flew direct entry. Proper skip entry wasn't flown until 2022 on Artemis. What Apollo 11 did was a small, deliberate stretch, not a bounce. And Collins was annoyed about the whole thing. Ha! In the debrief a week later, he says the weather looked fine at first, and then Houston started making grumbling noises about it. Mildly irritated, that's all. No idea he's complaining about a spy satellite. Anyway, they come down. 6.5 G, 4 minutes of blackout. Aldrin filming the fire out of the right-hand window. They land about 2 miles off target. The capsule tips upside down, and they blow the flotation bags to right it. Clear sky, 10 miles visibility, 82 degrees. And later that morning, aircraft fly out to the old landing spot, the one they'd been aiming at the day before. And it's there. The storm. Exactly where he said it would be. Oh, so that's the story. Except, it's only half of it, because something else went unnoticed that same morning. And this one, nobody catches at all. Just before entry, the command module lets go of the service module, the big cylinder behind it, carrying the engine, the fuel, the oxygen. Dead weight now. So it goes. And it's meant to fire its thrusters, push well clear, and come down much later. Somewhere else entirely, because the last thing anyone wants is a spent module near the capsule with the crew inside. Then Aldrin glances out the window. "Houston, we got the service module going by. A little high, and a little bit to the right. And a moment later, it's coming across now. Right to left. Oh, wait. The thing that should be long gone is crossing the window." An engineer on the program put it flatly years afterwards. It should have been nowhere close to them. The cause was a bad sequence in the controller handling the separation, the timing of which thrusters fired and when, built into the hardware. And that's when the obvious question shows up. If it was built in, then it didn't start with Apollo 11, did it? So they go back and look. Apollo 8? Apollo 10? Same fault. Both flights. 2 crews had already come home with a dead module drifting somewhere in their path. And here's the line that stops everything. Neither crew reported it. Not because they missed it, or hid it, or thought it didn't matter. Because they weren't looking out of the window. The old radar tapes were still sitting there. Somebody went back, played them, and there it was. Huh. It had been happening the whole time. So the danger wasn't new. The only new thing on Apollo 11 was that somebody happened to glance out at the right second. Though it's worth being careful here. It's very easy to say a collision would have killed them. And it lands well. No, nobody measured that. What's on record is how close it came, and that the engineers called it a serious anomaly. That's plenty. It doesn't need dressing up. So they land, and the world watches the president shake their hands on a carrier deck, and the two men who moved that landing point stand there and say nothing. They can't. One of them is given a Navy Commendation Medal from the Chief of Naval Operations himself, and he isn't allowed to explain what it's for. 26 years. The program stays classified until 1995, and there's one detail in there that's almost hard to sit with. Reconnaissance aircraft did fly to the original site.
They confirmed the storm. Brandley was right, and nobody could tell him. He found out 30 years later. To be fair, NASA has said since that they had their own satellite data too, and they might have moved that landing point anyway.
Yeah. So this isn't one man saving 3 lives on his own. It never is it? The captain said it better than anyone, looking back. So many things had to happen to make it come out right. And that's the thing that won't go away. On the 24th of July, 1969, every eye on this planet was pointed at the same place. At the fire, at the ocean, at 3 men on a deck. And what actually decided how that day ended was a photograph nobody was allowed to look at, and a window nobody thought to look out of. I'm looking round my room now, the window I walk past every single day, without turning my head. Things sitting there, saying nothing. And that's what this keeps doing. Every time, one more ordinary thing stops feeling ordinary. So which one am I not looking at? Right now.